Notre Dame sneaks out at home. Texas A&M bounces back, but not in a big way. Washington is on the rise in the Pac-12. The Oklahoma Sooners dominate, and we have to talk about all of it. But before we do that, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. Let me know what you guys are thinking down in the comments below. What did you guys think of week 3 of college football, and what team stood out to you the most? Additionally, if you guys listen to this on any of the podcast platforms, Google, Apple, or Spotify, please go ahead, give me 5 stars, leave me a review. It really helps me grow and it helps me continue to bring you guys great content. All right. So first up, we have to talk about Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman and whether they are in trouble. Okay, so Notre Dame on Saturday and Marcus Freeman finally got their first win of the season over Cal 24-17, ending a 3-game losing streak dating back to the bowl game against Oklahoma State last season. But here's the question that I have for you guys, and please jump down in the comments and answer this one for me. Is Marcus Freeman the right guy for the job? I think that this season could get really ugly for the Irish before it gets better. Additionally, you could see them continue to fall in the recruiting rankings as they could potentially have more decommits as the season progresses before early signing day. You've already heard of guys like Peyton Bowen, who saw Oklahoma play on Saturday, and it stood out. The way that Oklahoma controlled that game stood out to a lot of different recruits. And I with Notre Dame struggling the way that they are, that also sticks out to Peyton Bowen. And I think Peyton Bowen's got to be looking at that and going, that's a factor. So personally, what do I think about Freeman? Well, I think he is the right guy for the job, but fans in the university are going to need to give him more time to get Notre Dame in a good position on the recruiting trail. And when I say on the recruiting trail, I mean on the recruiting trail consistently. And then also to change the direction of this team on the field and maybe become more of an explosive offensive team, but also still have a solidified defense. I think Marcus Freeman's going to have to hire himself a new offensive coordinator, but we'll see that as time goes on. So to make matters worse for this season, you're without your starting QB, Tyler Buckner, for the whole season with the shoulder injury, and he doesn't play defense. And the defense is really what is hurting Notre Dame right now. You're letting teams like Marshall and Cal into games that they probably have no business being in with Notre Dame. Now, I want to give you a bright side, Notre Dame fans. On the bright side, 5-star quarterback CJ Carr has talked about potentially reclassifying to the 2023 class, and that would help the Irish lock down their quarterback for the future and a lot of their quarterback problems. So here's the question that I have for you guys. Please go and answer these down in the comments below. Is Marcus Freeman the right guy for the job? And where do you think that the Irish are going to go from here? Okay, Texas A&M bounces back with Max Johnson at the quarterback position, and this one, man, I don't know how I feel about it. So Texas A&M beats Miami last night 17-9 in a game that I personally thought was really hard to watch. So Texas A&M comes out of this game with the win, but I think there's some still real questions about how bad this offense looks and how A&M was outgained 392 total yards to their 264. And I want to go ahead and put this out there because I was thinking about this earlier, and we'll talk about this with Oklahoma here in a minute, is Jerry Schmidt and the impact that he has on wherever he goes. You can definitely see that there is a physicality issue and potentially a conditioning issue on this A&M team. These guys have no discipline. They don't play, like, they get tired easy. This, you could definitely tell that Jerry Schmidt leaving that program to come to the University of Oklahoma has been a problem for Texas A&M this offseason, especially for a lot of these true freshmen coming in there that ultimately want to be able to have solid play time on the ball. So Max Johnson starting at QB definitely seemed to provide a little bit more life in the passing game and give them different looks, but I don't think he's going to be the answer either. And one of the things that I noticed is he's not versatile in the running game as Haynes King is. Haynes King was a lot faster than he was, and that's something that Max Johnson doesn't have. But I think Max Johnson is a better passer. Now, I don't know if Connor Weigman fixes these issues because ultimately I think it still comes down to the offensive play calling for Texas A&M. They're just not it does not look like their play calling is very good, and I think that's an issue that they're going to continue to have until they find somebody different. You've heard me be an advocate since last week when Scott Frost got fired, but I definitely think Texas A&M needs to be going after Scott Frost to be able to give him a second chance, but also be able to help your offense out. And so if A&M goes with the offense that they currently have over the next 3 games, I think they're going to be lucky to walk out of it 1-2. Now, I do have to admit I'm wrong. I was wrong. I'm sorry, Texas A&M fans. I thought you guys were going to lose to Miami. Now, a lot of people thought that, but I thought that I had you guys losing to Miami by at least 14. I apologize. I got it wrong. I'll be man enough to admit it, but I still believe that you guys have huge problems on your offense. And then ultimately, Miami didn't play their best ball. And I believe if they played a little better, then maybe we would have seen a different game. And Tyler Van Dyke needs to do a better job at finding his receivers and being more accurate with his throws. But here's the question that I have here that I would like you guys to jump down in the comments and answer. Where does Texas A&M go from here with their quarterback play and their offensive play calling? Washington is back on the rise in the Pac-12, and this is kind of a shocker, not something that I saw at the beginning of the season. And I'm curious to hear what y'all think about this because Washington's going to be a very interesting team. And I was talking about it earlier on Jay with Unfair Sports, and we were talking about potential Heisman winners. And I said, you got to have Michael Penix Jr. in there, right? Because Michael Penix Jr. is one of the leaders in pass yards and touchdowns in the league in all of college football right now. I think he's got over 1,000 pass yards right now. Let me pull up the stats. Yeah, he's got over 1,079 pass yards. He's got a 66 passing completion percentage, 10 interceptions, 1 sack. Or no sacks, one interception. So 10 touchdowns, 1 interception, 0 sacks. And I think focusing on that 0 sacks is actually pretty important because that just means he either is getting rid of the ball before the defender can get to him, or that offensive line at Washington is pretty dang good. And I think that's going to be a problem for whoever they go face in the Pac-12 championship. But ultimately, if you're Washington, you just beat number 11 Michigan State. Now, granted, it was at home, but you got a fairly easy schedule from here. You got Stanford at home next week. Then you've got at UCLA, at Arizona State, which Herm Edwards just got fired. Arizona at home, at Cal, Oregon State at home. Your toughest game is at Oregon. So you got to go to Eugene. Like that's probably your toughest game from here. And then you got Colorado at home and you end at Washington State. So there's a pretty good chance that, hey, if Washington can continue to take care of business, go in there with their business trip mentality on the road, and then they can go to Oregon and beat up on Oregon in Eugene, that they could come out of this thing undefeated. And remember, Washington's already made a college football playoffs before. Now, they didn't go very far. They didn't do very good. They got killed. But that's interesting. It's interesting. And I think this program's definitely going in the right direction. And especially with Washington trying to be a program that the Big Ten would want. I think this definitely puts them in a great position to be able to go out there and try to get into the Big Ten or maybe come be a leader in the Big 12. I don't know. All I know is I'm super impressed with Washington, and I'm excited to see where they're going to go. So go ahead and hop down in the comments below. Where do you guys think Washington finishes with the season record-wise, and do you think they make the college football playoffs? Okay, is DJ Uiagalelei finally putting it together, and what are Clemson's playoff chances? Okay, so let's break this one down. Clemson is 3-0 for the season, but all the talk has been around and all the attention has been around the quarterback play and Cade Klubnik sitting on the bench behind DJ. Something that I want to note here. In 2020, after Trevor Lawrence went down, so he played a total of, I think it was 9 games. And the other 7 games that DJ had to come to and then, kind of wrap them up because, they were blowouts or whatever. He went 78 of 117 for a 66.7% completion percentage that year. He also delivered 914 yards, but only 5 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. In 3 games this season, he's throwing for 57 of 88 at 64.8% for 662 yards and 5 touchdowns and 1 interception. So in 3 games, he's thrown for more touchdowns than he did in the 9 games that he started in 2020. And remember, everybody was really excited about DJ Uiagalelei that year, especially when he came in for Trevor Lawrence when he was hurt. And I would make an argument that DJ's on pace to have a career year for himself. Now, he is down in the completion percentage department, but everything else, looks like he's excelling at. And I know it's not flashy, it's not 300 or 400 passing yards a game, but Georgia showed us this last year. You don't need a quarterback to go in there and throw the ball 400 yards a game and get 5 touchdowns in the passing game. You can do just as much with a mediocre quarterback. And if that's what DJ Uiagalelei is going to be this season, I think we're fine. I understand it. You guys have a really talented quarterback in Cade Klubnik sitting on the bench. But here's something I want to remind you guys that I think Clemson fans are forgetting. And it is this. Did you guys watch Oklahoma last year? Did you guys watch how much Oklahoma had to struggle when we swapped out Spencer Sanders for Caleb Williams? Because Caleb Williams had all the talent in the world. But people are forgetting that true freshmen make mistakes, and that's exactly what Cade Klubnik is. And personally, I don't think Cade Klubnik is big enough yet. I think he still needs to put on some muscle and some weight so that when he gets hit, he's not dying on the ground. And I want Clemson fans to understand, DJ is actually playing pretty good. Might not be exactly what you want, but he's playing pretty good. And if you swap him out for Cade Klubnik, you're only hurting yourself. And you're only hurting Cade's development. Because what if Cade goes out there and gets hurt? Maybe all of a sudden he doesn't develop into the player that you thought he would. And that's what I'm afraid of. I want Clemson fans to really understand the ramifications of letting Cade Klubnik start as a true freshman and getting rid of DJ. Because who knows? You could take this job away from DJ, and then all of a sudden DJ transfers from you guys, and you guys don't have a secondary backup quarterback. It's very well possible. So let's go ahead and let's look at the schedule for Clemson and see just kind of where they're going to finish, because next week they have to go to Wake Forest. I think they should win this game. And here's the reason why. Clemson still has a defense, a talented defense. And Wake Forest doesn't have a defense. So DJ should be able to go tear it up. I think your hardest game is going to be NC State at home. But I got to give Clemson the advantage there. Outside of that, I mean, you got to go to Florida State, and Florida State's pretty good, but who knows what's going to happen with their quarterback position this year. And then Miami at the end of the season at home in South Carolina. Both those games are at home. And quite honestly, Spencer Rattler has not played well because he does not have an offensive line out there. So I'm curious to see where Clemson ends. I still think they're going to make the college football playoffs. I still think you'll have an Oklahoma-Clemson matchup in the playoffs. But go ahead and let me know what you guys think in the comments below. What do you guys think about DJ Uiagalelei? Do you think he's put it together? And what do you think Clemson's playoff chances are this year? Okay, next up, we have to talk about, are the Oklahoma Sooners back? And here's what I mean on this. I don't mean like that they're down and that they're not back, because that's the talk that Texas has. I'm talking about the defense. And here's the reason why. I think the media and a lot of OU fans are overlooking, and I know this is going to sound weird, but I think everybody's overlooking at just what Oklahoma has on defense and the product that they're putting out. Because I think this defense is pretty good, and you've heard some people say it. Like, some people think that this is the best Oklahoma defense that they've seen in a long, 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 long time. And yes, I would agree. Probably in the past 10 years, best defense you've seen. But through 3 games, they're only allowing 10 points a game. They're giving up about 305 yards. But I mean, you have played Kent State, who is more of a high power. And the other thing is too, like, they probably could have shut UTEP and Kent State down and Nebraska, and you probably could have seen that number be under 200 or right at about 200. But here's my thing on that. Brent Venables is not going to put out his entire playbook right now. It's a new year. This is the advantage that Oklahoma has over a lot of other schools. It's a new year, a new playbook. People haven't seen what Brent Venables is going to be as a head coach with his defense at Oklahoma. So everything's new. When you go into a team, everything's new. It's hard to game plan for. So why would you open up your playbook that early? Yeah, you might give up a little bit more yards, and I've heard it. And I was one of those people, like, being in the stands, like, it sucks to have someone driving down the field on your defense, or to give up a touchdown here and there. But you know what? If ultimately it means later in the season, it's going to be harder for a team to scheme against you and you're going to be able to make more stops, then that's what I want. And something that's a little underrated for the Oklahoma Sooners right now is their sacks. So Oklahoma right now is sitting at number 5. Well, they're tied at 4, but if you look at it, they're number 5 in the country at 13 sacks in the country. That's not even pretty. That's really dang good through 3 games. Through 3 games, 13 sacks. And to think about it, think about all the breakout players on the defensive side of the ball that you've had this year. Danny Stutsman, 17 solo tackles. Now, we knew what Danny Stutsman was because we saw what he was going to be last year. But how about Billy Bowman? 14 tackles, solo tackles, 24 total tackles. Now, he hasn't had a sack. Danny Stutsman has. Or how about David Agwebu? He's out there calling the plays on the defensive side of the ball, putting people in position. And here's the other thing about this. There are guys, and if you watch this, you'll see what I'm talking about. There are guys on the defense who look to David Agwebu and ask, hey, where am I supposed to be? Am I in the right spot? And David Agwebu, he did that a little bit in high school. But to see that leadership in what he's doing this year at Oklahoma in this defense, and mind you, since he's calling the plays, this is a very Brent Venables' defense is very it's very complicated. And so for David Agwebu to be a guy out there calling those plays, putting people in the right positions, that kind of shows you what kind of leader and how smart he is. And then you got a guy like Jaron Kanak, who last game against Nebraska just showed out. He's got 17 total tackles. Or how about my guy Reggie Grimes? 10 total tackles, but man, that guy's got 4 sacks. And I expect, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and call it. Reggie Grimes has 10 sacks by the end of the season. Ethan Downs has 7. And I want to talk about Ethan Downs for a minute because we had Ethan Downs on the podcast this year. And Ethan Downs talked about how he wants to be a leader. Danny Stutsman said that as well. But Ethan Downs talked about how he wants to be a leader in that locker room, how he wants to be a presence and a force to be reckoned with. Like, small town Weatherford, Oklahoma kid. This is what legends are made of. You come to Oklahoma, you make a name for yourself. And I don't know if you guys saw Ethan Downs on Saturday against Nebraska, but woo, that man was playing. He was throwing Casey Thompson to the ground. And Ethan Downs is really aggressive. So that's one of the things that I really notice, and one of the things that I really love about Ethan Downs. When you watch him play, he's really aggressive off the ball. As soon as it snaps, he is in there like swimwear. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. But he's in there. He's in there. And you know, when you see other guys playing with that level of intensity, it raises the bar and it makes everybody else want to play at that level. And so, yeah, he might not be an official leader on the team, but he's setting the example, which makes him a leader. And ultimately, I think Ethan Downs is going to have a really successful career at the University of Oklahoma and maybe a really successful NFL career if he continues up this development, especially since, I mean, let's be honest, he's Smitty built. I don't know if you guys have seen the pictures of Ethan Downs last year in this staff versus this year's staff, but this man got swole. But I just want to let's look at his stats from last year compared to this year. So last year, Ethan Downs had 14 total tackles. 9 of those were solo. And he only had half a sack. He did have 1 forced fumble last year. This year, he already has 8 total tackles. 8. In 3 games. 4 of those have been solo. And he has 2.5 sacks. Does that not tell you anything about this defense and the resurrection that Oklahoma is having on the defensive side of the ball? Because here's another thing that I notice. We talked about it earlier with Texas A&M. Jerry Schmidt has made a difference on the defensive side of the ball. More than you would know. He's not calling plays. But when you watch the defensive guys out there for Oklahoma, what's one thing you notice? How they're not worn out within 5 plays. They don't have their hands on their hips. They're getting down. They're ready to play. They're lining up. Sometimes before the offense is even lined up, the defense is ready. And the defense is able to hold their own. And that's not something that we've had at Oklahoma in a long time. If you plug Brent Venables or even just this defensive coaching staff with this squad on a 2017, a 2018 Oklahoma team, I think you win the national championship both of those years. Now, 2019 with Jalen Hurts, you would have had to go up against LSU, and quite honestly, I don't see anybody that was stopping that LSU team, including Oklahoma, and I'm just going to admit that. Put them on this 2020 team, same thing. Another national championship. Because we squandered the Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray years. And I really think the resurgence of this Oklahoma defense has been so underrated. It's extremely underrated. Because look at what the previous coaching staff got out of the players. And I know people are going, oh, well, 40 new transfers. Okay, great. 40 new transfers are brought in. But I can tell you, Brent Venables is doing the same. He's doing better, a lot better, with a lot of the same players that Lincoln Riley had. Let me just explain it for you. Danny Stutsman, Billy Bowman, David Agwebu, Justin Broyles, Deshaun White, Harrington, Reggie Grimes, Key Lawrence, Ethan Downs, Woody Washington, Jalen Redmond, Jaden Davis, DJ Graham. Let's see here, Jordan Kelly. Marcus Stripling. These are all guys that were here last year. They are all guys that are producing for Oklahoma. They're telling me that Alex Grinch couldn't have success with these players, but Brent Venables and Todd Bates and Ted Roof and Jay Valai can. Come on. The resurgence of this Oklahoma defense is real. And if the Oklahoma defense keeps playing like they are now, there's a really good chance that this Oklahoma team could go the distance this year. And remember, a lot of teams didn't want to play Oklahoma's offense before. Do you really want to play Oklahoma now when their defense is playing extremely well and this offense can score at will, because that's what's happening. This offense really can score at will. Now, there's times where it looks like they can't score. That's because they're trying new things and they're doing different things. But we've seen it. The moment they want to score, they're going down the field and they're scoring. This is a team you don't want to play. And that's what I mean by is Oklahoma back. They're, I think, finally a team that's feared. A team that you go out there and it's like, we're probably not winning this game. It's a game you circle on your calendar and go, our chances are probably low. We're back to that dominant team. The team that people fear. Now, maybe Nick Saban doesn't fear us yet. Maybe Kirby Smart doesn't fear us yet. And rightfully so. We've got to go out there and prove it. But I'm telling you right now, these boys in Norman, they're ready to play. And as long as the fans keep bringing it, the players are going to keep bringing it. Okay, let's go ahead and let's talk about the OU-Nebraska game and break it down. And man, I'm just so happy after watching this game. I'm so happy. The Oklahoma Sooners went 49-14, but let's be honest, Oklahoma could have put up 70 or 80 points in this game. They really could have. Like, they turned it way down in the third quarter. You put Davis Bevel in, you ran the ball, and that was it. But I want to give you guys some players that I thought I was really impressed with. First one's Eric Gray. And we've talked about Eric Gray a lot this year and how I was wrong about him. But, man, 11 carries, 113 yards, averaging 10.3 yards a carry for 2 touchdowns. He's proven that he can be a first, second, and third down back. He's proven he can be the number one guy here. I'm glad to see everything's working out for Gray. He's what we needed in the running room. But right behind him, I got to give credit to the man, Javonte Barnes, who took it all over the Huskers. 13 carries, 77 yards, 5.9 yards a carry. He didn't have a touchdown, but I thought this one was really good. Javonte Barnes is going to be a hoss. Remember, he's a true freshman, guys. It's his first year at Oklahoma. Additionally, I got to give it up to Drake Stoops because Drake Stoops showed that connection that he has with Dillon Gabriel. And we all knew it. You need a couple yards. You're in the red zone. Give it to Drake Stoops. He's going to go get you those yards. But ultimately, here's the thing that most impressed me about this game. This is a game that OU would typically go drop or would play really close. Nebraska is not on OU's level, not even close. Normally, you've seen OU play down to competition, especially Power 5 opponents. They play down to that level. Now, they'll play up. Shoot, they go play Alabama or Florida, whoever. They'll play up to that level of competition, but they also play down to the competition as well. And, you know, I'm just impressed to see the discipline on this team. One of the things that really stood out to me was something that we talked about all week. Dillon Gabriel, some of these true freshmen, a lot of these players on the Oklahoma team, you're going into an environment where you don't normally go in the season or in Big 12 play to a stadium that holds 90,000 people. We don't have schools that big anymore in the Big 12. Actually, in fact, I think Oklahoma's the biggest. I think, if my memory serves me right, someone can fact check me on that. But that was some of the concerns. Is the offensive line and is Dillon Gabriel going to be able to produce in this hostile of an environment? And they proved us all wrong. They went in there, and this is the thing that really stuck out with me. 0 false start penalties. 0. Didn't have a 1. This offensive line showed us that they are able to go in there and play at an elitely high level. I say elitely. Is that even a word? They can play at an elite level. They can play at a high level. And I think that was something that I think really stood out to me. I don't know if you guys noticed that. Let me know in the comments if you guys noticed that. Did you guys notice that the offensive line didn't commit a single false start penalty, which is impressive because that Nebraska crowd is loud. And I got to give it up to those Nebraska fans. They stick up for Nebraska even when they're bad. But ultimately, OU just looked dominant in this game. They literally were having their way with Nebraska. And the most impressive thing is they shut down Anthony Grant, who I think could be a potential Heisman winner. He was averaging over 100 yards a game. He hadn't had a negative running play yet until he played Oklahoma. Think about that. In 3 games, he hadn't had a negative rushing play. That's impressive. And then Oklahoma comes into town and ruins it for him. But Casey Thompson, minus 30 yards on 5 carries. Oklahoma defense was all over Casey Thompson. I think Oklahoma had 3 sacks in that game. Ethan Downs had one of them. I think he should have had 2, I believe, but I don't think one of them counted. But this Oklahoma defense was all over the ball. They were all over this Nebraska team. And the thing is, another thing that you're not going to hear a lot about, and Parker and Brandon really alluded to this on their podcast, there's a lot of recruits and a lot of people out there and around the college football landscape that took notice of what Oklahoma did to Nebraska and how they were dominant and how they had their way with them. And that's something really important to note here, because Oklahoma is in a lot of big recruiting battles right now. 5-star safety Peyton Bowen out in Notre Dame, and Notre Dame's not looking good. Peyton Bowen was there against Kent State. I sat right behind him with Landon Sides. You had David Hicks took note of this game. Jordan Renaud took notice of this game. And then you had the 4-star athlete from Nebraska, Malachi Coleman, at this game. You know, he had to be taking notes. The question is Malachi Coleman going to roll with the Cornhuskers and what they could potentially do? Or is he going to roll with what he knows the Oklahoma Sooners can do? Ultimately, I think OU fans have to be happy. I would have loved as well to see us put up 60, 70 points. But here's the thing. You get out healthy. You can go into conference play, and it's all good. And here's the thing. The score in this game, 49-14, it doesn't tell the whole story because it wasn't that close. And here's the other thing. Nebraska had a total of 327 yards. A lot of those were garbage time yards. So that doesn't tell the story either. But it's a very balanced, if you notice, OU is very balanced in stopping the passing and the run. They held them to 164 passing yards and 163 rushing yards. And it's been like that all season. Balanced on both sides of the ball on the defense. OU's got a real test next week in Kansas State. I know Kansas State lost, but they have a real test next week. Kansas State's really good, and Deuce Vaughn is a potential Heisman Trophy winner. Potential. I was talking to Jay over at Unfair Sports about this today. I really think that there's a good chance a running back wins the Heisman Trophy this year, just because I think the quarterback plays down. And I think Deuce Vaughn is going to be a person that is potentially considered for that. Okay, we got to talk about the early Heisman favorites and where I think everybody's at. We're just going to run through this real quickly. I'm going to give you my top 5. Caleb Williams, number 1 at USC. The man's putting up numbers in the Lincoln Riley offense. Number 2, Deuce Vaughn. Well, okay, no, sorry. Number 2 is Muhammad Ibrahim out of Minnesota, leading rusher in the country. Did y'all forget that he got hurt last season and that he was coming back? Y'all got to stop sleeping on Muhammad Ibrahim. And then Deuce Vaughn. Extremely versatile running back. Do I need to say anything else? He's going to put up numbers all season. Bijan Robinson out there at the University of Texas. We know that man's a dude. He's going in the first round this year. And then at number 5, I have Bryce Young. And that's only because I think Bryce Young has probably looked the best out of CJ Stroud and Bryce Young, I really think that Bryce Young and CJ Stroud could potentially fall out of the Heisman this year. And that's not a hot take. I just think people know how to defend with that too high safety look against CJ Stroud. Now, are people going to give that look to Caleb Williams? I don't know. But right now, that's who I have as my top 5. I'll post that on Twitter and Instagram for you guys so you guys can go ahead and check that out. But again, if you guys listen to this on any of the major podcast platforms, Google, Apple, or Spotify, go ahead, leave me a 5-star review. Leave me a nice comment. Let me know that you guys are watching the show. It really helps me grow, helps you guys, bring you guys great content. Additionally, go ahead and hit that like or subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. We're trying to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I am trying to get additional guys on the show for you guys. We do have something really special coming up, so tune into Twitter. You guys can follow me at thePGshow _ for that news. But until then, we'll see you guys next time.